when desperation meets destiny. The rain hammered against the windows of Le Bernardin, Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for the struggles below. Maya Chen adjusted her worn uniform for the third time that evening, her trembling hands betraying the anxiety that gnawed at her insides like a hungry beast. At 26, she carried herself with the grace of someone who had learned to hide pain behind practiced smiles. "Table 12 is asking for their wine selection again," barked Chef Morrison, his voice cutting through the kitchen's chaos like a knife through butter. Maya nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of exhaustion that had become her constant companion. She had been working double shifts for 3 weeks straight, desperately trying to save enough money for her daughter Emma's medical treatment. Emma, her 5-year-old angel who waited at the restaurant's back office, coloring quietly in a corner, because Maya couldn't afford childcare. The little girl had been born with a rare heart condition that required surgery costing more than Maya could earn in 5 years. Every night, she watched her daughter sleep, counting the gentle rise and fall of her chest, terrified that one day it might stop. As Maya approached table 12, balancing a silver tray of crystal wine glasses, she noticed the solitary figure seated in the restaurant's most coveted corner booth. The man commanded attention without saying a word, his midnight black hair perfectly styled, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection, and his steel-gray eyes that seemed to pierce through souls. This was Alexander Kane, the billionaire real, a state mogul whose name graced the city's skyline and whose presence could make or break careers with a single glance. Maya had heard whispers about him from the other staff. Cold as winter morning, ruthless in business, never smiled, never showed emotion. A man who built empires but destroyed dreams without a second thought. He dined alone every Friday at exactly 8 p.m., ordering the same meal, leaving precisely at 9:15 p.m., clockwork precision that spoke of a life lived in rigid control. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the universe had other plans. As Maya carefully placed the wine glasses on the adjacent table, she heard a sound that stopped her heart. Emma's delighted giggle echoing from the hallway. Panic flooded her veins as she realized her daughter had wandered out of the back office, probably looking for the restroom. Maya's eyes frantically searched the dining room until she spotted her. Emma, in her tiny pink dress and pigtails, had somehow navigated through the maze of tables and was now standing directly beside Alexander Kane's booth. Time seemed to crystallize into slow motion. Maya dropped the empty tray, the metallic clatter echoing through the suddenly silent restaurant. Every patron, every server, every breath in the room seemed to pause as they watched the unthinkable unfold. Emma, with the fearless innocence that only children possess, looked up at the intimidating billionaire with wonder in her chocolate-brown eyes. Without hesitation, without fear, she climbed onto the booth's leather seat and threw her tiny arms around Alexander's neck in a fierce hug. "Daddy!" she exclaimed with pure joy, her voice carrying across the stunned restaurant like a bell tolling destiny. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander Kane, the man who had never shown emotion in public, who had built his reputation on being untouchable, sat frozen as this tiny stranger clung to him. His hands hovered uncertainly in the air, as if he had forgotten how to move, how to breathe. How to exist in this moment that defied everything he thought he knew about his carefully constructed world? Maya's blood turned to ice in her veins. This was it. This was the moment that would destroy everything. She would be fired, blacklisted, unable to pay for Emma's surgery. Her daughter would die because of this one moment of childish innocence. But as she rushed forward, stammering apologies that caught in her throat like thorns, something extraordinary happened. Alexander Kane's arms slowly, hesitantly came down around Emma's small frame. For just a heartbeat, his steel-gray eyes softened, and Maya could have sworn she saw the ghost of a smile touch the corners of his mouth. Then reality crashed back, like a tidal wave. Alexander gently disentangled himself from Emma's embrace, his face returning to its mask of cold composure. The restaurant buzzed with whispered conversations and barely concealed stares. Maya felt the weight of 100, judging eyes as she scooped Emma into her arms. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Kane," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible above the thundering of her own heartbeat. "She didn't mean, 'I'll take her away immediately.'" But instead of the explosion of anger she expected, Alexander Kane did something that shocked everyone present. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card, holding it out to Maya with fingers that trembled almost imperceptibly. "What's your name?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying a warmth that no one in the restaurant had ever heard before. "Maya Chen," she replied, confusion clouding her features as she took the card. "And this little angel?" "Emma," Maya whispered, pulling her daughter closer. Alexander's eyes lingered on Emma's face, studying her with an intensity that made Maya's skin prickle with unease. There was something in his expression, recognition, longing, pain. "Call. Me tomorrow, Maya Chen," he said finally, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't identify. "We need to talk." As Alexander Kane stood to leave, placing a $100 bill on the table for a meal he hadn't touched, Emma wiggled in her mother's arms and called out one more time, "Bye-bye, Daddy." This time, Alexander Kane did smile. And in that smile, Maya saw something that would haunt her dreams and change her life forever. The unmistakable look of a man who had just found something he never knew he was looking for. The sleepless night that followed felt like an eternity wrapped in thorns. Maya sat in her cramped studio apartment, Alexander Kane's business card burning a hole in her palm as Emma slept peacefully in the bed they shared. The rain had stopped, but the storm in Maya's mind raged on with hurricane force. Kane Industries, Alexander Kane, CEO. The embossed letters seemed to mock her in the dim light of her bedside lamp. What could a billionaire possibly want with a struggling waitress and her sick child? Every rational part of her mind screamed warnings, but something deeper, a mother's intuition perhaps, whispered that this encounter was fate disguised as coincidence. At exactly 9 a.m., Maya's trembling fingers dialed the number on the card. A crisp, professional voice answered on the first ring. "Mr. Kane's office, this is Rebecca. How may I help you?" "This is Maya Chen. Mr. Kane asked me to call." A pause. "Please hold." The seconds stretched like hours before a familiar voice came on the line. Deeper, more commanding than she remembered from the restaurant's intimate setting. "Maya." The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. "Can you meet me today? There's something important we need to discuss about Emma." About Emma. The words hit her like a physical blow. How did he know her daughter's name mattered? Beyond last night's encounter? I have to work," Maya stammered. "Not anymore. I've already spoken to the restaurant. You've been given paid leave indefinitely." The audacity of it, the sheer power to reshape her life with a phone call, should have angered her. Instead, it terrified her. "Mr. Kane, I don't understand what's happening." "Neither do I," he admitted, his voice softer now. "But I think Emma might be the answer to questions I've been asking for 5 years. 5 years. Emma's exact age." Maya's world tilted on its axis. "What are you saying?" "Meet me at my office at 2 p.m. Bring Emma. And Maya..." He paused, and she could hear something breaking in his voice. "Bring any documents you have about her birth." The line went dead, leaving Maya staring at her phone as if it were a serpent that had just struck her. Documents about Emma's birth. The birth certificate that listed the father as unknown. The hospital records from that terrifying night when she had given birth alone, abandoned by the man who had promised her forever. David Chen, not her real husband, but the kind stranger who had married her when she was 6 months pregnant, giving her and her unborn child his name and legitimacy before quietly disappearing from their lives with nothing but gratitude between them. He had saved her reputation, but he couldn't save her from the questions that had haunted her for 5 years. Emma's father. The man who had swept her off her feet during her final year of college, who had made her believe in fairy tales, who had vanished the moment she told him she was pregnant. She had only known him by his first name, Alex. He had been older, sophisticated, mysterious. He had claimed to be a graduate student, but everything about him had screamed money and privilege. Alex, Alexander. The realization hit her like lightning splitting the sky. The steel-gray eyes, the way Emma had run to him so naturally, the recognition in his face when he looked at her daughter. No, it was impossible. A coincidence, a cruel trick of fate that her mind was twisting into significance. But as Maya sat in the taxi speeding toward Kane Industries' towering headquarters, Emma chattering excitedly beside her about seeing the nice man from the restaurant, Maya couldn't shake the growing certainty that her life was about to shatter and rebuild itself in ways she never could have imagined. The Kane Industries building pierced the Chicago skyline like a glass and steel monument to power. Maya felt like Alice falling down the rabbit hole as they were whisked to the 50th floor. In a private elevator, Emma's small hand clasped tightly in hers. Alexander's office was a testament to controlled perfection. Minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a god's-eye view of the city, and not a single personal photograph or memento to suggest that a human being actually worked here. Except today, there was something different. On his massive mahogany desk sat a manila folder, and beside it, almost hidden behind his computer monitor, was a small framed photograph that made Maya's blood freeze in her veins. It was a picture of a young woman with long black hair and laughing eyes, wearing a college graduation cap. It was a picture of her, taken 5.5 years ago by the man she had known as Alex on the day they first met. "Hello, Maya," Alexander said softly, rising from behind his desk. He was different, too. The cold mask had slipped, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. "Hello, Emma." Emma ran to him immediately, as if drawn by invisible threads, and this time, Alexander didn't hesitate. He lifted her into his arms, and Maya watched in stunned silence as her daughter's tiny hand touched his cheek with the casual intimacy of recognition. "I know who you are now," Alexander said to Maya, his voice thick with emotion. "I've known since the moment I saw her face last night. I've been looking for you for 5 years, Maya. Ever since you disappeared from Northwestern University without a trace." "You left me," Maya whispered, the old pain fresh as an open wound. "When I told you I was pregnant, you disappeared. I waited for you. I called every number I had. You were gone." Alexander's face crumpled with anguish. "I never knew you were pregnant. The day after you told me you had something important to discuss, I was in a car accident. I spent 3 months in a coma, another 6 in rehabilitation. By the time I could search for you, you had vanished. The university had no forwarding address. It was like you had never existed." The folder on his desk seemed to pulse with significance. "What's in there?" Maya asked, though part of her already knew. "DNA results," he said quietly. "I had them run from a hair on my jacket after Emma hugged me. She's my daughter, Maya. Emma is my daughter." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge over an impossible chasm. Emma, oblivious to the earth-shaking revelation, was playing with a paperweight on Alexander's desk, humming softly to herself. 5 years, Maya breathed. "She's needed surgery for her heart condition. Do you know what I've been through trying to save enough money? The nights I've worked until I collapsed? The times I've held her when she couldn't breathe and thought, I might lose her?" Alexander's face went white. "Surgery? What's wrong with her heart?" And so Maya told him everything. About Emma's condition. about the mounting medical bills, about the nights spent crying over a checkbook that never balanced, about the desperate choice to bring her daughter to work because she couldn't afford childcare. With each word, Alexander seemed to age years. When she finished, he walked to his window, staring out at the city that bore his name on dozens of buildings. "I have money," he said finally, his voice hollow. "More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And my daughter has been suffering because I couldn't find her mother." He turned back to them, and Maya saw tears, actual tears, in the eyes of Chicago's most feared businessman. "I want to make this right, Maya. I want to be her father. I want to pay for her surgery, for everything she's ever needed, for everything you've sacrificed. I want—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "I want my family." Emma looked up from the paperweight, sensing the emotional current in the room. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Maya hadn't realized she was crying until Emma pointed it out. Happy tears, sad tears, overwhelmed tears. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, grown-ups cry when something very important happens." "Is Daddy coming home with us?" Emma asked, with the matter-of-fact directness of childhood. The word daddy from her daughter's lips, directed at Alexander, sent shockwaves through both adults. Alexander knelt beside Emma's chair, his face level with hers. "Would you like that, Emma? Would you like me to be your daddy?" Emma nodded solemnly, then threw her arms around his neck again. "I knew you would come. Mommy said daddies sometimes have to go away, but they come back when their little girls need them most." Over Emma's head, Alexander's eyes met Maya's. In them, she saw 5 years of searching, 5 years of regret, 5 years of a love that had never died despite separation and heartbreak. "The surgery," Alexander said quietly. "We'll schedule it immediately with the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country. Money is no object." "I can't just let you—" "She's my daughter, too," he interrupted gently. "Let me do this. Let me be the father I should have been from the beginning." As Maya watched Alexander with Emma, saw how naturally he held her, how gently he spoke to her, how Emma's face lit up in his presence, she felt the protective walls around her heart beginning to crack. But with the joy came fear. What did this mean for her and Emma? Could she trust this man who had the power to give them everything or take it all away? And most terrifying of all, what would happen when Emma's surgery was over and the crisis that had brought them together was resolved? The answers to those questions would have to wait. For now, there was a little girl who needed her daddy, and 2 hearts that needed to learn how to beat in rhythm again after 5 years of separation. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that their story was just beginning, and that the real challenges lay not in the past they had lost, but in the future they would have to build together, one heartbeat at a time.